Pushpin disclaimer. This story is a work of emotional fiction inspired by real-life situations faced by many individuals in relationships and military families. It is intended to highlight personal strength, emotional growth, and the challenges of navigating love, loss, and motherhood. Names, characters, and events are fictional and created for storytelling purposes only. We lived in a small Navy housing unit just outside the base. It wasn't much, but I had made it feel like home. There was a small patio where I kept potted plants, and inside, family photos and small touches of love were everywhere. At that time, I thought we had a good life. My husband, Marcus, was calm and disciplined, traits that suited his Navy career, but he also had a softness with me that made me believe we could get through anything. When we got married, we were full of plans. He talked about the future with confidence, traveling after retirement, buying our own house, and starting a family when the time is right. That last part stuck with me. I wanted a child. Not just someday, but soon. I was ready for that next chapter. I imagined what it would be like to decorate a nursery, to feel life grow inside me, to hold a baby in my arms that was ours. But every time I brought it up, Marcus brushed it off. He always had a reason. The timing wasn't good, we didn't have enough savings, his deployment schedule was unstable. I tried to be patient, telling myself he just needed more time. I even convinced myself I was being too emotional or unrealistic. But there were moments, small, sharp ones, when his eyes would go distant or his tone would change. He'd say, "Why rush? We have time," but his body language said he didn't want it at all. I began to feel like I was chasing something that only I could see. Still, I kept believing in us. I kept believing in him. Navy life was hard, but I stood by him. I waited through his deployments, managed everything alone at home, and kept myself busy with part-time work and volunteering. Everyone around me assumed we were the perfect couple. I played the role so well, even I believed it most days. But the cracks were there. At night, I would lie awake wondering if he truly wanted the same life I did, or if he was simply going along with it because it was easier than facing the truth. I feared that if I pushed too hard, he would pull away. And that fear held me back from saying what I really felt, that I was ready to be a mother, with or without him. That was the life before the storm, when I still thought love was enough, and that one day, he would wake up and want the same things I did. I just didn't know that day would never come. The first time I truly felt the emotional distance between us, it was subtle, almost invisible. Marcus came home from a short assignment, and something about him was off. He kissed me on the forehead instead of the lips, didn't ask how I'd been, and spent most of the evening glued to his phone. I told myself he was just tired. That's what military life does to people, right? It wears them down. I let it go. But that distance started growing. Slowly, steadily. I'd mention baby names or show him cute baby outfits in the store, trying to spark a conversation, maybe even a smile. He'd either change the subject or chuckle dismissively like I was joking. When I tried to sit him down and speak openly, he'd sigh and say things like, "Why do you always bring this up when things are finally calm?" It hurt more than I let on. Each time he dismissed the idea of having a child, I felt a piece of me crumble. I didn't need him to be enthusiastic right away, I just needed to know he was open. But instead, it felt like he was silently building a wall, brick by brick. There were other signs too. He started coming home later, claiming he had extra shifts or training. His phone was always locked. He became irritable over small things like the way I folded laundry or the fact that I left the porch light on. Arguments that never used to happen started to occur weekly, sometimes daily. And all around me, in the Navy housing community, life continued as if nothing was wrong. I'd see other women with their kids, pushing strollers, exchanging parenting tips at the commissary. Their laughter felt like a cruel reminder of everything I didn't have, of everything Marcus and I weren't becoming. I started to withdraw emotionally and socially. I stopped meeting friends, stopped cooking dinner the way I used to. Even intimacy between us became rare, then awkward. There were nights we went to bed without even saying goodnight. And yet, in the back of my mind, I kept clinging to the hope that this was just a phase. That every relationship hits rocky patches. That maybe he was stressed and needed time. I told myself he still loved me, even if he didn't say it as much anymore. But the truth was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. He wasn't just avoiding the topic of children. He was avoiding me, and I was losing him inch by inch. It wasn't planned. I didn't sit down with a script or a calm, collected tone. The words came out in a flood, fast, shaky, and louder than I expected. It was a Sunday morning, the kind when everything feels too quiet. Marcus had just poured himself a cup of coffee and was scrolling through his phone like I wasn't even there. I had barely slept the night before, my thoughts circling the same painful truth. I couldn't keep living in limbo. So I said it. I can't keep doing this, Marcus. He looked up, brows raised. Doing what? Waiting, hoping, pretending like we're on the same page when we're not. He didn't respond. He took another sip of coffee. That silence, the kind that cuts deeper than words, was unbearable. My voice cracked. I want a baby. I've always wanted one. And I can't put my life on hold anymore while you figure out if you even want the same things. Still silence. Then I said it, the line that changed everything. I'll have a baby with or without you. The moment those words left my mouth, something shifted in the air between us. He stared at me, stunned, like I had just betrayed him. But I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't threatening him. I was just telling the truth I had kept inside for far too long. He put his coffee down slowly. Then he stood up. So that's how it is? He asked, his voice tight. I nodded, blinking back tears. Yes, that's how it is. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked at me like I was a stranger and walked out of the room. Hours passed. I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, waiting for him to come back, to say something, anything. I hoped this was just another fight, one that we'd fix like we always had. But when I finally walked into our bedroom, his side of the closet was empty. No note. No goodbye. Just missing clothes, a duffel bag gone, and a pair of boots he'd always meant to fix, left behind on the floor. I stood there frozen. The man I had waited for during deployments, cried over during goodbyes, and built a life with, had left without a fight. Without even trying. And all because I dared to want a future he wasn't willing to give. It was the ugliest kind of heartbreak, not from betrayal, but from being discarded when I finally chose myself. The silence after he left was louder than any argument we ever had. That night, I sat on our bed for hours, staring at the empty side where Marcus used to sleep. I kept expecting to hear the front door open, to hear his voice calling out like it was all some horrible mistake. But all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old pipes, and my own heartbeat echoing in the quiet. I didn't cry, not at first. I was too numb. Too shocked that he would actually walk away, not just from me, but from the life we were supposed to build together. One ultimatum, and he vanished. No conversation. No closure. Just gone. The next morning, I opened the blinds and sunlight flooded into the room. And that's when it hit me I was truly alone. Living in Navy housing meant I was surrounded by families. Kids riding bikes in the parking lot, moms pushing strollers, husbands in uniform coming home for lunch. Everywhere I looked, there was a version of the life I had wanted so badly. But it wasn't mine. People started noticing his absence. Neighbors asked casually, "Hey, where's Marcus been lately?" And I'd smile weakly, lying with a half shrug. "Oh, he's out on assignment." I couldn't bring myself to say the truth out loud. He left me because I wanted a baby. The loneliness wrapped itself around me like a second skin. I stopped attending the base events. Stopped talking to the other wives. I felt embarrassed, like I had failed some invisible test. I was no longer part of the unspoken sisterhood of military spouses who stuck together no matter what. I was the exception now, the one he left. I couldn't sleep. I barely ate. My routine disintegrated. The house started to feel too big, even though it wasn't. I avoided the bedroom and slept on the couch most nights, unable to lie on the mattress where his absence was too painfully obvious. Some friends checked in, but no one really knew what to say. And honestly, I didn't want to talk. I didn't know how to explain the heartbreak of being abandoned, not because of infidelity or abuse, but because I wanted too much. But was it too much to want a child? A family? A future? The shame and grief twisted inside me like vines. There were moments I doubted myself, wondered if I had pushed him away. If I had just waited a little longer, been more patient, less demanding. But deep down, I knew the truth. I didn't lose him because I wanted a baby. I lost him because he was never truly ready to grow with me. And now, left alone in that empty Navy housing unit, I had two choices: break apart or find a way to begin again. The hardest part wasn't being alone. It was remembering who I was before I wrapped my entire identity around him. For days, maybe even weeks, I drifted. Wake up, shower, if I had the energy, sit on the couch, scroll through social media, then fall asleep with the TV playing in the background. I wasn't living, I was just passing time. There were no tears left, only silence and questions. But one morning, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't recognize: hollow eyes, unbrushed hair, and a woman who looked like she had given up. That's when I knew something had to change. I started with small things. I lit candles in the kitchen again, opened the windows, cleaned the apartment. It was painful. Every object reminded me of Marcus. But clearing the space helped me clear the fog in my mind, too. I threw away things he left behind, donated the old boots, took down our wedding photo. Not out of anger, but because I needed to make room for myself. Then I opened a journal. At first, I didn't know what to write. But eventually, the words came pouring out: memories, regrets, anger, hope. Writing gave me a voice when I felt like I had none. It became therapy when I couldn't afford a real one. It helped me name what I was going through: grief, loss, abandonment, but also resilience. I began researching single motherhood. Not out of desperation, but out of empowerment. I read blogs, joined online forums, even connected with a support group for single women exploring IVF or adoption. Every story I read reminded me that motherhood isn't defined by a man's presence. It's defined by love, commitment, and the courage to move forward. It was in those quiet moments, usually late at night, that I felt a strange sense of calm return. I hadn't let go of my dream, I was just choosing a new way to reach it. I also started reflecting on my marriage more honestly. There were so many red flags I had ignored: the way he avoided responsibility, how he made me feel small when I spoke up, the coldness that had crept into our home long before I said anything about a baby. I had been trying to hold us together while he had already started pulling away. And maybe, just maybe, his leaving wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the beginning of the version of me I was always meant to become. So, piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. Not into the woman Marcus wanted, but into the woman I had buried under compromise and silence. And as painful as it all was, I was finally standing on my own feet. Healing isn't a straight path, it's more like walking through a forest at night. You stumble, you trip, and sometimes you walk in circles. But eventually, you find a sliver of light. And for me, that light came in the most unexpected ways. It started with one message, just one, from a woman I had connected with in an online support group for women considering solo motherhood. Her name was Camille. She had gone through IVF by herself and now had a 2-year-old daughter. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. And, for the first time in a long while, I felt less alone. Our conversations turned into phone calls. She talked me through the process: doctors, costs, emotional highs and lows. She didn't sugarcoat anything, but she reminded me that what I wanted was possible. More than that, she reminded me that I was allowed to still want it. I scheduled a consultation at a fertility clinic. Even walking into the building felt like reclaiming a part of myself. I wasn't just someone Marcus left behind anymore, I was someone moving forward. Someone making decisions, not waiting for someone else's permission to live. The process was intimidating. Hormone tests, paperwork, early morning appointments. But with every step, I felt stronger. I started to believe in myself again, not just as a woman, but as someone worthy of motherhood, love, and happiness. At home, I made small changes to reflect this new chapter. I repainted the bedroom, bought a new bookshelf, filled it with books about parenting, self-growth, and healing. I even created a small vision board with images that gave me hope, a mother holding a child, a sunrise, the words, "You are enough." The nights were still the hardest. I'd lie awake wondering if I was making the right choice, if I could really do this on my own. But each morning I woke up with a little more peace in my chest and a little more faith in my future. There was one evening that stands out. It had just rained. I was sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. The air smelled fresh, the sky was soft pink and gold, and for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't waiting for Marcus to walk through the door. I wasn't thinking about what was lost. I was dreaming, genuinely, about what was next. That night, I whispered to the universe, "I'm ready. For whatever comes. I'm ready." And deep in my heart, I believed it. There's something deeply empowering about choosing yourself, especially after being left behind. But choosing yourself while choosing to become a mother? That's a whole new kind of strength. I began fertility treatments 2 months after my consultation. The clinic staff were kind, understanding, and careful with their words, but I could tell they didn't often see women come in alone. Still, I never once hesitated to say, "Yes, it's just me." The process was emotional. There were hormone injections, blood draws, and anxious days waiting for test results. My body changed, tender, bloated, exhausted, but I didn't let it break me. Every symptom reminded me that I was doing something, that I wasn't stuck anymore. Camille became my biggest supporter, checking in every few days and cheering me on. We joked that she was my IVF doula, and in many ways, she really was. She helped carry my emotional weight when it got too heavy, especially on the days when doubt crept back in. I also started journaling letters to my future child. Some days, I wrote with excitement, "I can't wait to hold you. I already love you more than words." Other days, I was raw. "I'm scared. Scared of failing. Scared of doing this alone. But I promise, if you come into this world, I'll give you every part of my heart." And then, one afternoon in the clinic parking lot, my phone buzzed with a call that changed everything. "Hi, is this Ava? We have your results. Congratulations. You're pregnant." I didn't hear anything after that. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, tears rushing down my face. Happy tears. Shocked tears. The kind of tears that only come when something impossible becomes real. I was going to be a mother. The moment I stepped back into my apartment, it felt different. Brighter. Warmer. I touched my stomach gently, barely believing there was life inside me. No matter what came next, nausea, doctor visits, loneliness, I was no longer just surviving. I was creating. I began preparing slowly. I bought a small stuffed giraffe and placed it on the nightstand. I created a drawer in my dresser labeled baby and started filling it with tiny onesies, prenatal vitamins, and parenting books. I even caught myself singing around the house again. Not everything was easy. There were moments when grief still visited, when I thought of Marcus and how he'd never know this baby, never understand the joy he walked away from. But those moments passed quickly because the future I once dreamed of with him, I was now building on my own. And with every heartbeat growing inside me, I knew I didn't need permission. I didn't need him. I was enough. The day my son was born, the world felt quiet, like it paused for just a moment, as if to honor the miracle that had unfolded. After hours of labor, exhaustion gripping every inch of me, I heard his cry. Not loud or sharp, but soft, almost questioning, as if he, too, was trying to understand where he had arrived. When they placed him on my chest, I didn't just cry. I broke open with love, relief, healing. I whispered, we made it, again and again. Because we had. Through heartbreak, loneliness, uncertainty, and fear, we made it. I named him Eli. It means ascended or lifted. And that's exactly what he was, my rising from the lowest point in my life. My reminder that beginnings don't have to come from joy. Sometimes they come from pain and still grow beautifully. Motherhood wasn't perfect. I faced long nights with no one to take turns. I made bottles while half asleep. I comforted Eli through fevers, colic, and teething, often with tears running down my own cheeks from exhaustion. There were days I questioned if I could keep going. But there were more days when I knew I could. Each smile, each giggle, each tiny hand wrapped around my finger was a piece of the life I had once begged Marcus to imagine with me. He couldn't see it, but I could. And now it was real. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus ever thinks about me. If he regrets leaving. If he scrolled through my social media and seen a photo of Eli, his eyes like mine, his dimple like Marcus's. I don't know if he does. And truthfully, I no longer care. He gave up a family. I created one. What's more powerful than that? My apartment doesn't feel empty anymore. It's full of baby toys, half-folded laundry, bottles drying by the sink, and laughter that spills through every room. The silence I once feared has been replaced by lullabies and coos, and the sound of a life blooming right in front of me. And me? I've come full circle. I started this journey thinking I couldn't do it alone, that I needed a partner to feel complete. But now, as I hold my son and rock him to sleep, I realize I was never alone. I had myself. I had the fire inside me. And now I have him. This wasn't the life I planned. It's better. It's mine, too.